Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to my Black History Month recommendations. I don't usually do these kind of videos, but I saw some people talking about how it seems like it's a lot of the same books and authors getting shouted out in these kinds of videos, and since my tastes run almost exclusively indie at this point, I felt like I might have some new blood to inject into the conversation. So a couple of these will probably be ones that someone else has talked about to a certain extent, but my more indie ones, I'm hoping we'll get some new names and faces out there for anyone trying to do like a Black History Month readathon, which that might already be going on. I don't actually know when that is. Maybe it's month long. I don't know. But I'm going to jump right into it with a quick honorable mention. This is The Tubman Command by Elizabeth Cobbs. It is about Harriet Tubman's time as a spy for the Union Army, including one specific mission she went on to save a whole bunch of slaves off a plantation. It is very impeccably researched. There's quotes from primary sources on every page. However, while the author is a fantastic historian, she is white. So that's why this is getting a quick honorary shout out. Definitely something to look into if you want to know more about Harriet Tubman or a little bit into her life, but we need to move on to some Black authors. So my first official pick is the most traditional, and if booktubers got their stuff together, should be making their lists because it's fantastic, and that is The Deep by River Solomon. This is a novella about African mermaids, all about a mermaid, actually they're called Wajinru, named Yetu, who is trapped. She is the historian for her people, but in this world that means that she basically has all of the horrible memories caught in her head so that everyone else can live in ignorance. And this runs themes of what do you do when your past is still a part of who you are, but it's also really painful to hold on to. And I mentioned in my review of this book that this felt like a message specifically conveyed to African Americans or people from that community. And I said that if anyone wanted this copy, I would be sending it out. And someone accepted. The problem was they were from Canada, and it took me a while to get to the big post office, and so they ended up just buying it themselves. But I still want to follow through on that promise. So if you are American, unfortunately, an American Black booktuber, book blogger, what have you, and you would like a copy of this book, please let me know. I still want to ship it out to someone who's got better, background to shout this one out. There's also some gender queerness in that the Wajinru can, I believe they have both sets of equipment, and their sexuality is very fluid, and there is a WLW romance that I thought was so cute. So in general, so much representation in all of its own voices because River Solomon is non-binary, and I would highly suggest this one. And I haven't looked at enough videos to know, but I better be seeing this on these recommendations or else everything's canceled. All right, and on to the indie stuff. First up is Matters of Convenience by Roy L. Pickering Jr. This isn't so much a romance with an HEA guaranteed so much as it is a contemporary focused on the pitfalls of modern relationships. It revolves around three young adults, Marshall, Audrey, and James, and Marshall has had a crush on Audrey for a very long time, and it is not subtle. But Audrey has this new guy named James, and things start to get very tangled. Now, this isn't really a love triangle, at least not the way you're thinking of it. It runs very literary in that characters will act in very realistic, albeit brutal ways, and it's one of those cases where you have to like characters that are interesting, even if they're not always likable. One character I wanted to punch in the face at the end, but it's still an interesting look into the lives of young Black adults in America trying to, figure everything out. Their race does come into effect a little bit, especially in the realm of two professionals of the three trying to get jobs and basically being looked over. I did like how the book also brings up Audrey as struggling with both racism and sexism, and how that's kind of like a double hitter when she's trying to move forward in her career. I really appreciate that was brought up, but this one definitely is more serious, more literary in feel, and I would caution anyone going into this thinking that it's a romance. It's not. Up next is The Kishi by Antoine Bondelet. This is all about a young monk who comes to this new village trying to learn some things and overcome his past, and you discover what that is over the course of the story, only to find that this village is being just haunted by these creatures called the Kishi. Now, this is all based on African culture, and the Kishi are so intriguing as like a monster, I guess you could say. Basically, like you can see in the cover, it is a man, almost always a man, with the face of a hyena on the back of his head, hidden by his hair. And in the moments where the Kishi go like full Kishi, they end up being like half hyena, half human. And it's the weirdest mechanics, but it's so intriguing and so unique compared to a lot of modern day fantasy. And the mechanics of having to beat them and find out who is a Kishi and their inner workings was so interesting to me. I also love that there's a ton of badass female characters in here. I use this as my, if you liked the idea of Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James, but you wanted something that was a little less depressing and misogynistic, go for this one. Thankfully, I managed to get a conversation going with the author because I couldn't figure out how to pronounce his last name. And long story short, I am reviewing another one of his books coming up here, and it's all about African sky pirates, and I am hyped. So be on the lookout for that one, and also check this one out if you want some awesome African culture. Up next is a book that I don't know what it was, if it just hit me at the right time, but oh, I loved it. And that is This Time by Ozza Davis. This is all about a young demon hunter named Nadira who comes back from the dead 20 years later. She sacrificed herself killing this big dude, like demon king, but is resurrected to find that demons have now wormed themselves into human culture by claiming that they were being persecuted. And now demon hunters are basically cobbled. And Nadira's whole like arc dealing with her grief, and yes, she's back alive, but the world isn't what it was because she doesn't recognize anything, and all of the people who were her friends are now like in their 40s and moved on, and she feels out of place, and just her emotional depth was so heartbreaking, but like kind of beautiful, and you feel for her. And there's also this fantastic midway twist that almost came out of nowhere, but once I went back, like made sense, and it gave a whole new level to this story. And I can't say what this was, but there was just something about it. It was like maybe my all-time favorite, or tied for my all-time favorite book of January. And I would be surprised if this didn't make like one of my top of the year lists. But I love Nadira. I love how resourceful and badass she is at one point, and also emotionally vulnerable at others. There's some awesome like demon killing, some nice twists, including one at the very end that hit me in the face. And I'm so happy that I got to review this, and I get to review the sequel. So be on the lookout for that. Oh, and every book I reviewed will have their review down in the description below. Might want to mention that. Up next is Tavern by Destin Munden. This is one I've talked about a lot, in that Destin Munden was one of my first Twitter mutuals, was one of the first people to welcome me into the writing community online. And so I always joked that he should be giving me his book to review, and he did. And I loved it. Everything worked out. This is a D&D style slice of life high fantasy, and my favorite part is that the main character is an orc, and I just really want more orc protagonists. And the thing I like about this book is, while it's an orc, you can still see representation in that he's kind of coded as black, being that, you know, more than just the fact that most orcs in fantasy are coded as black subconsciously. He has to like code switch a lot of times. People look down on him, and he's such an adorable soft boy despite the fact that he is an orc. Orcs in this book are also a lot softer as a culture. They're not quite as focused on warmongering, which I really liked because I'm so tired of that warmongering culture for orcs. And I also mentioned in my review that this book is kind of like a series of short stories almost. That's where the slice of life comes in. There is a run through of a plot line with a big bad, but most of it is like them going piece by piece through their lives, and it feels like you're listening in on a D&D campaign. Like, I can almost imagine like the group of 20-somethings, all friends, sitting around a table, and like these two are dating. You can see it in these characters, and there's a lovely developing relationship between two female characters. One of those, shut up, I don't like her, stop smiling. I love it, and I'm really hoping that we see more of it moving forward. There's also, I forget what they call it, but it is essentially fantasy skateboarding scene that is fantastic. And the only thing I think I had a problem with this one was like Zelnath was like too nice. I felt like I needed more conflict in some parts. So if you want like some high fantasy that's a little bit lighter and not quite as dire as a lot of high fantasy tends to be, check this one out. It is awesome, and I continue being mutuals with Destin and low-key hoping to get the sequel because I would love that. So that is my list. Those are far from the only Black author recommendations that I have, but I figured I might want to keep this at least a little bit condensed. I've got some others on my list. I'm always trying to diversify my review list especially, and it's always nice when I have enough of any one demographic to be like, here's a list for you. I'm not that great at doing it for all kinds of people. My Latinx list is very lacking. And we can't even talk about my own Voices Asian list. But I'm working on it. So if you have any great recommendations for Black History Month, please let me know. I'd be interested in seeing those in the comments down below. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.